Paul, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the Be Love podcast today. It's great to connect with you this way, and I'm thinking about the New Jerusalem study we did quite a few years ago now, and in the same format, connecting over Zoom. It was so fun to be with you in that exploration. And today's conversation is similar. I mean, we are thinking about the New Jerusalem, the holy city, the community of love, of free exchange, of giving and receiving, of heaven that we all, I'm pretty confident, long for. But the invitation today is to just hear from you a bit more of your story of how love has called you, what you've come to understand of love, what you've learned about love's movements, what supports it, what gets in the way. I wonder where you might like to begin.
Well, probably where I am. I'm next year will be my 10th year of pastoring at the Garden Chapel Sanctuary in St. Louis. I like to think of it as the Wayfarers of the Midwest,
Yes.
minus the Pacific Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a small community there, and we are building, I think, a mission, so to speak. Um, it's come to me that our church, rather than having a large attendance in person, will grow that attendance over the course of time online.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, we will become what I think is a studio church.
Hmm.
And that's kind of a broadcast way of saying we will most likely have more people attending online than in person. And that's okay because we're all new at this. Ever since COVID, we've all learned how to use our various Zoom like features, and we're learning how to communicate. And as it turns out, I have people from Kansas and from Italy and from Switzerland who regularly, and Arkansas and Michigan, who regularly attend our service online. So I'm so grateful that we have this technology today. And
Yeah.
I think we're still at the very infancy stages of it. So as I enter the 10th year next year, I'm also realizing that we're still newbies at this business of communicating over the airwaves, so to speak. And I think it's going to be a ministry that develops over time, like all
Sure.
of our ministries.
Like all of them, yeah. I'm curious, you like to think of the Garden Chapel as the Wayfarers of the Midwest. What is it about the Wayfarers brand or naming that resonates with you in the Garden
Yeah,
Chapel?
that's a good question. Besides the architecture of the building, which was modeled after the Wayfarers, um, in fact, our former board member, one of our board members who passed away, I should put it that way, was an architect, and he used to give tours of the Frank Lloyd Wright home,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Epsworth home, I think it's called, in Kirkwood. And then after the tours, he would offer to bring people up to the church to show
Okay.
them the similarities in our architecture.
So the building really is a Wayfarers of the
It
Midwest.
is. It is really seriously designed like the Wayfarers. It was not designed by Lloyd Wright, as the Wayfarers was, but the architects were definitely inspired by uh, Frank Lloyd
I
Wright.
confess I've never been there, so it has the same invitation to view the natural world while you're inside. Is that I
Yes,
know that's sort of the primary uh, design element of Wayfarers. So the
yes,
Garden Chapel, the same thing.
definitely. Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. The other aspect of it is that in addition to being kind of a showcase architecturally, I think it has that kind of leaning toward nature and recognizing God's creation and non-human creatures as being a part of this. I'm going to call it the grand reconciliation, of realizing that having heaven within us is also recognizing the beauty of what God has created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in that vein, we were successful in establishing a conservancy, which is our property is maybe a little over 3 acres, and about 2.3 acres of that property is a woodland. And we have been successful in conservancy protection for that woodland so that even if the church goes away at some point in generations to come, that wooded area will always be protected.
Mm.
So that
Beautiful.
again reflects our commitment to love and be part of creation rather
Mm-hmm.
than to exploit it or treat it as something dispensable, if you
Yes.
know what I mean. So
Oh, I definitely know what you mean, and it's so important. The history of especially Christianity does sometimes have this. The real good stuff is going to happen after we die, so it's not so important what we do.
yeah,
And I love the way the Swedenborgian faith and many others turn that around and say, no, heaven is here. We need to bring heaven here. And bringing heaven here is about being in right relationship with
it's
this incredible creation that we are a part of. I always remind myself of that. My body is not distinct from all the elements of this earth, right? It is
right.
made of this earth. Yeah. It's so exciting what's emerging at the Garden Church. And the other interesting word you use is this idea of a studio church. So when you say that, the vision is the kind of that putting your energy into producing a worship service that can then be broadcast out. Is that what you mean when you say
Yeah,
studio church?
exactly. One of the things I discovered the year that COVID hit all of us is, in fact, the year that we first had a online convention, I realized that with all the effort that different churches were making, very few people realized, or at least took into consideration, that the audio portion was really, really important. And yet we were hearing pianos and speakers and participation from people that were really difficult to hear and that the sound quality was really poor. Like, I appreciate your Riverside studio and
Yes,
the
yeah.
efforts you put into making sure that the sound is really good.
Yes.
So at our church, we have a 16 channel soundboard. We mix everything in the microphones on the piano, the microphones for the bass player and the vocals, and my guitar and my vocals. And we have a microphone kind of front and center for people that want to share prayers or testimonies or just share whatever is on their heart. And I always ask them to please come up and use the microphone so our friends online can hear. And then just last year, we applied for and received funding to purchase high quality cameras. So instead of using a webcam, which again, most churches are using, we finally are. We haven't set it up yet. We're getting some professional help to do that. Um, a 4K camera that is basically, I think it's an 8K camera actually, that is designed for what they call pan, tilt, zoom capabilities. So we'll be able to do a little bit better with our visual as well. So the question that we always ask ourselves, and this is what I mean by a studio church, um, who, what would make someone comfortable when they walk in? How is it that they would experience the best possible, experience they could have? And we have to ask ourselves that online as well. I mean, we've been used to asking ourselves that as a church. Some of us have, but we haven't really thought about that online. And we look at the video recordings of our online services, and sometimes we go, oh, I think we can do better. So our motto to this day and age is we can do better, and we're
Hmm.
trying to learn how to do better.
We're trying to learn how to do better. I love that, Paul. And I really hadn't. I guess I hadn't known that you guys have put so much energy into. I knew you had some attendees from other parts of the world, but I didn't know that you were really focusing on that. And that feels so useful. It feels so incredibly useful right now. And it's making me think about, part of my questions right now is sort of what is church, and how is God speaking to us? And I'm very conscious of how much it feels to me God is speaking to us through our computers, through people making YouTube videos, through film, through music, through all of
Yes,
these incredible technologies that are available to us today. And I think this is a really useful question for people doing church, is like, how do we access those technologies and and take them seriously? Because it's sweet and quaint sometimes to join a Zoom worship where things are a little, where people are doing their best, and I think a
sure.
lot of people are open to that. And um, we can do better. So I love that. It sounds like a grand experiment.
It is.
And when you do, and what is it? I guess the question that leads for me is, as you do better and seek to be a studio church and broadcast, who are you speaking to? What feels like the community of the Garden Church? Do you have words for that yet, or a sense of kind of who you're seeking to reach as as Paul Deming? What are your thoughts about that?
No, I mean, my hope is that we'll get some people who are consider themselves spiritually intrigued, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not yet identified with any particular creed or doctrine, or maybe just tired. One of my one of my passions, I think, is appealing to people who are just kind of worn out from traditional church dogma. And I think that's, I mean, I'm in seminary right now, decided to go back and get additional training just to be more useful to my congregation.
Mm-hmm.
And the seminary where I attend, um, I'm the first Swedenborgian to attend, and a lot of them have just never heard of Swedenborg. And they're beginning to realize that there is a unique way of approaching biblical truths, of approaching universal truths, of relating to people who maybe don't see themselves as part of a church and
Yeah.
maybe just feel like they would like to be connected to something that isn't quite so restrictive, or maybe isn't quite so shaming, or isn't quite so spiritually arrogant that they would judge other people or judge other religions or judge other nations or races or sexual preferences, and would recognize the easy trap it is to fall into, to think that we all have to think the same,
Yeah.
or that we all have to view every scripture the same way, or that we all have to agree that this is exactly how God wants it to be.
Yeah.
When in fact we are still learning. If we are honestly going to say we can do better, then maybe we need to set to one side all of our preconceived notions about what better looks like. And so when I come into a church or into a building or into a room, I want to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I want to feel like my voice may be heard. I want to feel like it's okay to be doubtful, skeptical, uncomfortable at times, and maybe just a little bit despairing. I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I really love, I'm supposed to write an essay on this week. Uh, the author is Douglas John Hall. He was a Canadian, and he used the term dialogue with despair as an instrument of building our faith. I thought, I really like that. I'm not sure I really understand it, but it speaks to me because it says we don't have, listen, we're not perfect. We are far from perfect, but we do have this idea of what perfect looks like. And sometimes God says, it's not your vision of perfect that we're all about. So I'm learning that sometimes in our despair, in our weakness, in our fears, that these are kind of like sharpening tools for us, and that they need not be the worst thing. It's not like, oh no, this is the worst thing that ever happened in my life. No, it isn't. This is nothing. I mean, look at our ancestors. Look at what the great patriarchs and matriarchs of faith experienced and why they're considered these great heroes. It's not because they didn't have these issues of fear or doubt or skepticism or all of the violence and destruction that they had to see from day to day. It was just their steadfastness. And the Palestinians have this word, it's called samud. Samud means perseverance, steadfastness. In the midst of all this stuff that we deal with, it's just the steadfastness to keep on, just to keep on learning and keep on looking toward the light. So I use samud along with our great Jewish brothers and sisters word shalom. And there's even a Hindu word, I think it's shanti, and it just means peace, but not necessarily like world peace, but a wholeness. So shalom means a wholeness. Shanti means a wholeness. And we don't get that wholeness if we're not willing to have a dialogue with despair.
Oh, it's so beautiful, so beautifully put. I loved the way you use when you're describing your audience, like those who were tired. I really relate to that word. I
Yeah,
think a lot of us are, yeah, we're tired of quick answers or,
I know. I know.
anything that excludes any part of our human experience.
I just chuckled that you said that because I remember we used to sing a song, He is exalted, He is exalted. And one of the children was singing, He is exhausted. I was thinking, yeah, I get that.
The little child will lead us. They
That's
they they
true.
see it. They
Yeah.
see it. They see it. So beautiful. And when you're speaking of all these different terms for persistence or for inner wholeness, it makes me think of um, I've been sitting a lot with the word faith because Helen Keller uses that word faith in a way that I think means a lot more than we sort of think about it in our. I think we tend to think of it as faith traditions, and a faith is
Hmm.
a certain set of beliefs. But the way she uses that word is really it's it's faith. It's faith in life. It's a willingness to
Yes.
persist, to
Yes.
go on the grand adventure, to not perceive our struggles or limitations as signs to turn back, but as opportunities to choose. And that definition of faith is so meaningful to me. It feels like that's what draws me to spiritual communities. I want to be with people of faith. I want to be with other people who are also persisting in the real experience of life. How do you how does the Garden Church? How do you make space for that in your offerings as a studio church? Tell us a little bit about what Sundays or what community looks like that you're bringing into the world.
Well, as I mentioned, our commitment to the Conservancy effort, that made us change our name from Church of the Open Word to Garden Chapel Sanctuary. So we
Very gifted
literally,
vibe.
Yeah,
Very different vibe. I mean, I know what you mean when you say Church of the Open Word, but I can certainly imagine many would interpret that as
church.
maybe a fundamentalist church. Um,
Yeah,
Garden sanctuary. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's
yeah.
beautiful.
And sanctuary, of course, has multiple meanings, right? So our idea there is that our invitation is not to be a regular, dogmatic.
Hmm.
These are our, printing on the bulletin. These are our beliefs, and please join us in these beliefs. It is really bring your whole self in, and we will dialogue with you, and we invite your voice, and we understand skepticism, and we understand criticism of the church history. We understand that, and we welcome it because it helps shape us. It shapes who we are. So we never, in my opinion, of doing better,
Hmm.
we never like hold out this business card and we don't say, if you want to become more like us, please join us.
Right.
That's what most people perceive, right? Like, oh, if I want to be more like you, I can join your group. And how pleasant that is. I think instead what we're saying is, come dialogue with us. Teach us what you feel. I think one of my favorite scriptures is the young lawyer who comes to Jesus and says, "What must I do? How can I get this?" And Jesus says, "What do the scriptures say? How do you interpret them? How do
Hmm.
you read them?" We don't ask people that. We just tell them, "Oh, come on in and listen to how we interpret scripture." It's really supposed to be a dialogue. So we're supposed to say, in my opinion,
Hmm.
how do you read it? How do you see this? What is your experience and where are you coming from? And then when they're curious, we share with them, well, this is how I see it. This is my experience. Do our experiences mesh at all? Do you see anything in yours that resonates with mine, or do you see anything in mine that resonates with yours? And that's how we learn from each other. So
Hmm.
I really have this resistance. I don't think we can all escape it because we do it naturally. But I have this resistance to coming across as if we have all the answers, and we invite you to step into our parlor where all the
Yes.
answers are available because we don't have all the answers. We're still learners on this bus, and we're frankly in need of some outside views, and we're in need of people with different experiences. So we invite that. We invite the dialogue. We understand the pessimism or the despair or the critical nature that some people bring in. And sometimes they part that way. That's
Hmm.
okay. We're still blessed with their brief visit.
Yep.
But there are those people that say, this just resonates with me so well. And I feel so at home in being who I am without trying to be anybody else. And I think I would like to kind of hang with you guys for a while.
Yeah.
That's the best kind of visitor we have. And they come in, they really do.
I love that. I love that, and I've been using that term more lately to think about church. Like it's really just people who want to hang with each other, right? It's just people who and who feel that sense of home. I hear that a lot when I speak to people who are involved in different communities. Like it feels like home. Tell me about that feeling of home for you, Paul. And maybe you want to share a little bit about how you found home in church before the garden church, or maybe you just want to focus on what's happening now. What's that feeling of home? What makes you feel like you belong in this place?
Yeah, I'm sort of embarrassed to tell people that I was once a part of the fundamentalist movement, although
Don't be.
I didn't really think of it that way, but when I was 16 years old, I committed my life to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it wasn't from a gospel tract that somebody handed me, and it wasn't from some minister calling, making this grand altar call. It was just I attended a Bible study with a girlfriend I had at the time, and these people were so relaxed and comfortable that I felt comfortable. And the Bible study was really, I think they called it Day Spring. And this little home that called themselves Day Spring invited people in, and they would open up scriptures and they would just talk about it. And I never felt any pressure to like join or be part of anything there. But one of the things that really troubled me was that I had this yearning to really understand what might be true. And my prayer literally was, God, if this is truth and not some passing fad, please just convince me, persuade me. And so that's kind of my introduction into a world of spiritual ease. And I
Mm,
think too that my conversion, if you want to call it that, was not extremely emotional or, celebratory. In fact, I decided at that point in time, the real strong sense I have from God was, I have known you all of your life. I have loved you all of your life. From the time you were conceived until this very moment, this very day, this very hour, I have
mm,
loved you.
mm.
And I was just like overcome with that. And I just thought, oh my God, that's so amazing. I mean, that was a sense that flooded my whole being at that
Yeah.
time. So, regardless of Swedenborg, regardless of the new church, regardless of the journey that I've made from then till now, that experience has stayed with me.
Yeah.
He knows you. God knows you. She knows you.
Mm-hmm.
God knows you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your conception of God is, God knows you and loves you.
I thank you so much for sharing that experience and for confessing your maybe fear of that or initial association. As I go along this path more and more, I yes, there are things I disagree with the fundamental, with many churches on a deep many disagreements exist. And that fundamental experience of recognizing yourself to be loved by God, by your creator, by Jesus Christ, that moment of coming to that knowing, I definitely perceive that there are all kinds of humans that maybe have a big theology that I disagree with and maybe come to conclusions that I disagree with, but there's still something really holy in that moment of coming to know ourselves as loved fully. And I don't know why so many go from that to, and now we have to subscribe to all of these deeply conservative, problematic views. I don't know why that has to happen. But I also wonder if there aren't many people who have had those initial experiences and then, like you, gone on and and lead me, God, lead me where I need to go. And yeah, so that's beautiful. So you had that experience and then wanted to be taught, wanted to be. And is that what eventually led you to find the Swedenborgian church, or what was some? I imagine that's a long. Is it a long story, a short story?
No, I had actually left the fundamentalist movement, but I had stayed within it for probably 40 years, maybe 50, but it stayed with me for a long time just because it was still fellowship, it was still a community, it was
Yes.
still community awareness, if not living. And there was a lot of growth over that period. I never was comfortable with going out, and it's a real common feature of fundamentalist churches to have this evangelical side, this side of mission, like we have to go out and hand out gospel tracts and convince people that they're going to hell if they don't agree with us. I never was comfortable doing that, so I never went on these missions, so to speak, and was almost, I had this kind of ingrown resistance to trying to persuade people that they're miserable. I mean, I never saw the sense in that.
Yeah.
When I was the one that looked miserable trying to convince them, it just it just didn't make sense to me at all. Um, but after kind of disassociating with that, um, I did sense that there was still something there. And I walked into the Garden Chapel in 1993, and it was because we were looking for a place to have a memorial service for my dad. My dad had been a minister for a portion of his life, but he left the ministry when he needed to support 5 kids, and the ministry just was not giving him enough to do that with. And he had a friend, George. They both left seminary at the same time. They left the ministry, I should say, at the same time. They went through seminary, but they left ministry at the same time and went to work for IBM. And I
Mhm.
remember George saying, God, we were more proud to tell people we were with IBM than that we were with the church. So I got a big kick out of that. But when my dad died, we insisted that George would do his eulogy. And we were so surprised that all these fundamentalist churches that I had been a part of, they would not hear of it. They had to have their own
Mhm.
pastor do the service, officiate it, do everything. And I thought, there is no way my dad would ever want that. So
Yeah.
we kept looking around, and finally I contacted this church. I think I had once sung there and thought it was a beautiful architecture. And so I called, and the minister at the time was Dave Veenstra. And
Okay.
Dave said, well, it's unusual to have your own minister, but we will allow it.
Mhm.
That was
Mhm.
it. I walked
Mhm.
into that place when we had my father's memorial, saw some books by Swedenborg, was intrigued enough that I decided I was going to come back and visit a Sunday service.
Mhm.
And
Interesting.
that is the service that, oh my goodness, it wasn't like there was anything special about the music.
Mhm.
There wasn't really even anything that special about the speaker, who was Dave, but it was just a level of comfort. I think there's so much that kind of resonated with me. Like, I think I would like it here.
Mhm.
And there was a woman, Alice Mason, who was sitting in the back of the church and in kind of a high back chair because she was disabled. And as I walked by, she grabbed my hand and she said, Paul, Paul, will you please come back next Sunday? Please?
Oh,
This dear white-haired lady with very blue eyes was looking into mine, and all I could say was, "Yes, Alice, I'll come back."
well, that's beautiful.
So the spirit of Alice still brings me back every Sunday.
Uh-huh. Every Sunday, she's still bringing you back. Oh, I love that. I love that. So it really was, some people stumble into Swedenborg through kind of an academic search, or it sounds like you've just been following this journey, and it led you to this place and to these people and then to these ideas, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And it sounds like community, or a sense that piece of the pie of feeling, I liked how you described that early Bible study as those who were there were at ease. And I think there's something to that. It's like when we're at ease, we make other people at ease because we're comfortable, and so then they can be comfortable. And is that have you always felt that
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
always? So it's always with you. There have you you've never had an experience of being with others where there wasn't that ease.
Well, when you experience dis-ease,
Yeah.
that feeling, I mean, that happens from time to time, but that's usually um, when there's something. additional that's pressing upon your spirit or your heart.
Yeah.
And it's not really due to other people. I mean, it may be triggered by others. It may be triggered by the news. It may be triggered by the world around us. My mother was Ukrainian, and when Putin invaded Ukraine, I was very much at dis-ease because I just felt like it doesn't matter that they're not in the UN. The world needs to come to their rescue, you know, and I was very upset that my mother's homeland, even though it was her mother's homeland. My mother grew up in this country, but she spoke fluent Ukrainian with her mother. And I know that my grandmother immigrated to this country in 1909. And she, at that time, um, went through Ellis Island. Um, I mean, you talk about a lack of ease. I just think of the people that came to this country, and a lot of them fled a situation in their homeland that was not tenable. In my maternal grandmother's case, she was fleeing an arranged marriage, and God, I just love that spirit. And she came to this country, and the person that had been promised to followed on another ship, but they wouldn't let him in because he had consumption, and he died on the way back to Ukraine. Ironically, my grandmother met another Ukrainian while in the States and married and had something like 13 children. So my mother was one of 9 sisters, and she had had 3 brothers, two which had died young, and one that died when she was still fairly young. So I remember going to all these aunts' homes as a child and just trying to keep track. I had no idea how many sisters my mother had. But this experience of, you know, just the fortitude to survive and get through life has stuck with me. And I think also that the ease or lack of ease is almost a sidebar because in our experience, my experience at the Garden Chapel Sanctuary, we we are stumbling over ourselves to try and be a comforting and welcoming place. But even that can be an obstacle. And sometimes what we just need to do is just gather and say, well, this is who we are, all of our faults, all of our, you know, misunderstandings, and we are just going to gather and we're just going to try to worship God, and we're going to do the best we can at it. But some parts of it might really suck, and some parts of it might be really, really grand. I don't know. I have no idea.
We don't know. Yeah. I love that. I love that. There's that need, and you shared that at the beginning, to be welcoming to many different opinions, different voices. We want people to bring in, and I certainly feel that that's the reality of life. And there are particular things that make me feel at ease and that I enjoy and that I prefer. And I imagine the same is true for you. And so there really is a balance that we need to walk of being who we are and creating the experiences that we are drawn to create, letting it be enough, without, yeah, because that bending over backwards is, I think of the holy city as when we're in that state of flow and ease, we're just being exactly who we are, and the ones who are with us, and the ones who are not, and to kind of accept that not, and actually embrace it. We can't be with everybody. We can't be in an intimate relationship with 8 billion people, right? Only a certain amount. So in that vein, what could you share about you've shared some particulars of the mission of the Garden Sanctuary, the connection to nature. I know music is a huge piece.
It's part of my life.
What are some more flavors of kind of what people would experience if they tune in on a Sunday, in terms of what you really enjoy that you bring to worship. What are some of the things you might share about that?
Yeah, okay, well, that's good. I think we have this idea of this microphone up front in the center is an invitation, kind of symbolizes an invitation to share. Um, and sometimes we're still kind of struggling with people online, you need to unmute and then you
Uh-huh.
need to mute again. So
Okay.
we're kind of
So there's
dealing with,
really a so there really is a space. A lot of worship services are just sort of one or two speakers and one or two musicians. But at the Garden Sanctuary on a Sunday,
yes.
everyone who comes can have a voice.
Well, yeah, as a pastor there, the liturgy is one that invites voices. So,
Cool.
for example, I will always have someone else read our scripture inspirations for the day,
Uh-huh.
and I insist on a volunteer. If I don't have one, I will volunteer you. Um, and sometimes we've had people like Chris Leitner from Michigan who visits us occasionally, will sometimes do our reading for us. One of our board members is a person who zooms in from Kansas, and very often he will share um, a response to something I've said or maybe something that's on his heart early in the service. And then we have this portion of our liturgy where we ask for testimonies of what God's doing in your life, or if you have prayers of need, or if you have prayers of thanksgiving. We invite that. So there's a portion of our service that's dedicated to that. But I do tell people, listen, when I'm speaking, if you feel the need to interrupt me and you have something you need to say, we welcome that. I sure encourage that. At the end of our service, even after we sing our Nunc Dimittis, which is the closing song of peace, um, we will very often have a postlude. And lately, what I've been using is this app called WhatsApp. It's the European version, right, of what we use here, TikTok or whatever. And so I've been getting videos from a woman who likes to play organ. And we don't really have an organ at the Garden Chapel or an organist. So I play these videos of this woman who is donating her services basically as an organist, and she'll play pieces that she has played for her own church that she is offering to us. So I love that. I just think it's great that we might have a board member from Kansas or somebody from Michigan or somebody providing me a postlude from Switzerland. And I just think this is great. This is kind of earth, small town earth that we're experiencing. And I think it's really important to have that in the service. And the last thing I want to do is be like, this is the service of Paul.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
I tried, you probably have some pointers for me on this, Sage, but I try to keep my message to 10 or 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I try to allow for responses at the
Mm-hmm.
end. So that's why sometimes instead of a postlude, I'll just say, does anyone have any additional thoughts, or does anyone want to respond to anything that I've said or that anyone else has said? So I think that interchange is really an important part of our
Oh,
Sunday
it is.
gatherings.
I love hearing that. That's great, Paul. I don't know if you heard this story, but the reason I am a Swedenborgian today, most likely, is because my mother stumbled into the Portland New Church when I was a teenager, and Robert McCluskey was giving the sermon, and he gave the sermon, and then afterwards he said, "What do you think?" And she was just like, "What? I get to have an opinion? I get to have." It really moved her, and that feels very Swedenborgian. Like that feels like a really good. I know we're all very different and we do things very differently, but that invitation to dialogue, and it's tricky sometimes to incorporate that into a worship service. In some ways, it lends itself to smaller groups. So there is sort of this question of do we
Yeah.
Do we want to be a smaller group, and the benefits of that that engagement? That's really cool. So, I guess we've been talking for a while. What are some last thoughts about? I mean, it sounds very full. I feel like you've given me a very full story of how love is calling you all right now. I mean, it feels like you're on a path, you're on a mission, you're bringing this into the world. Anything else you might want to share with us about what's egging you on right now in your ministry or your life?
Yeah,
Yeah,
school. I'm
school.
really anxious to be finished with that.
When do you graduate? When is it over?
Well, it's either going to be May, or if I'm still a half a credit shy, which I might be, I'll have to take another course over the summer.
Okay,
But I plan to be done with that in 2026, and I plan to have my chaplaincy completed before our convention in 2027, and I hope to have all of my Swedenborgian certification done at that time as well. It's my hope to actually be fully ordained. I say fully ordained because I'm a licensed pastor now, and it
right.
was no easy thing attending the years of seminary training to get there. So
Yeah.
the full ordination, hopefully, will happen in 2027 at convention. And if we're lucky, it will be at the St.
In
Louis.
St. Louis.
Yes.
That will be
So
wonderful. St. Louis was actually the first. I did go to convention in St. Louis, so maybe I have been to the garden, but I was like 15 years old, so I don't really remember it. I don't, but I look forward to going back. So you'll be able to be ordained in the
I'm
garden.
I'm
Oh,
hoping I will, because I know a lot of people will attend that would
yeah.
probably not be available out of town. So yeah, that's my hope. That's my excitement. So, only closing thoughts I have are that we're still learning as a church how to be responsive, not just to the environment, but to non-human creatures, to just the voices of those who are seldom heard. Um, how can we really be a ministry to the poor if we don't really have any outreach programs? So we're looking at what can we do in whatever small way? Can we contribute to a food pantry? Can we be somehow inviting? So right now, there's a woman who's been sleeping in her car that comes parks in their parking lot. So we're kind of at a level with the board, like, well, how can we be of help to this person? Because we're not going to let her freeze over the winter.
Yeah.
So these kinds of questions are learning experiences for us. And we're not like waving any, we're the rescuers of the world. We're just trying to be responsive, and we're trying to be participants, I should say, in the world around us, but with a vision and with a light and with a hope that we can be useful to the community around us.
Amen. Well, I trust you will find your way, Paul. I trust you all will find your way. From hearing your story and you're just focused on how can we be a little bit better. That feels so whole. That feels very holistic. It's um and thank you for your ministry, and thank you for the ease you bring into room. I've shared rooms with you, and I feel that ease from you. You carry it with you, and thank you for sharing it with the world.
Thank you so much.
And I
An
love
honor.
it
Yeah.
when we both are in this